So it's something that changes at each level of growth. What you've become excellent at will serve you in the future, but you can't stay there. So when I was talking before about how people stagnate at growth with that Muzak example, like people like the music that they used to like. People like to do the things they're good at. It's part of fixed mindset. It's part of the work of Carol Dweck. So that all describes what's the zone of competence. So these are zones. Some of this comes from Gay Hendricks in The Big Leap. I'll just give him a little attribution here. So the question is what's the zone of genius? And that other question of like, what do you feel called to do that really you're best suited to do? That only you can do. And I wouldn't obsess on that, but it's kind of the unique. If you look at like a Venn diagram of you, and for some people, Venn diagrams have 3 more things. It's like, who are you? Like what are some of these edges of the puzzle? Like what are some of these intersecting themes? So for an example, like for me, one of my constant themes in my life has been around planetary thrive. It's been for so many years, like 30 some years. Right. Of like, I really care that the planet thrives. So that might be one of my circles. And then like what else? Well, I could say I've noticed I'm most effective leading dynamic groups. And I can do it online. So that might be another circle, is like online dynamic groups. And then another thing that I'm really into with these is, and I'm going to put planetary and personal thrive over here. I'm going to add personal because we're all part of that big thing. So I'll just clarify that in there. What I'm also really into is free solutions. So I'm much more likely to talk about juicing thistle than juicing kale. Why? Because thistle's free. It's everywhere. It's free. So yeah, I charge a lot of money for people to do coaching with me, but I also, on my podcast, when I'm giving solutions or when I write books, I talk about solutions primarily that are free. And so this for me, like the little Venn diagram of me of like, this is what makes me special, like this is where I know, sorry to make fun of myself there. But like, there's this place that it's like you're zoning more and more into that. And there's reoccurring themes in that. And that really is a bit of what's in my zone of genius. I could also say like, I'm pretty good at communicating. I'm pretty good at like writing things, making tip sheets, giving little lectures, being on podcasts. Like I'm strong in communication. I'm stronger in communication than other types of things. I'm weak in administration. Strong in communication. So, I could add that as a circle in my Venn-ness is I can communicate. I can write. I don't mind leading. It's not like I always need to be in the spotlight or anything, but I don't mind. Okay. So this is the thing. Remember how I said most people stay in the zone of competence? But the zone of competence becomes a trap. Some people, they become competent at something and they do it a lot, enough to become excellent. That's like Malcolm Gladwell's book on when he talks about like the 10,000 hours, right? Like if you do something enough, if you put in enough time, you'll get really good at it. If you try to shoot a free throw enough time, you'll end up getting it in the hoop. If you do it enough, you'll end up getting it in the hoop consistently. It's more of a function of repetition. So in that's what happens is competence becomes excellence with focused repetition. Some people get trapped in the zone of excellence. I do what I look good doing. I do what I'm good at. And that keeps people stuck. So my friends with businesses that didn't pivot as the world was going more online, as even like teams were going more online, they stayed in their zone of excellence. And usually what happens is it's very uncomfortable to go back in the zone of incompetence. But when you need, thanks for nodding, Sue. I appreciate that. Right? It's really uncomfortable. But in order to get, it's interesting, in order to keep moving into the zone of genius, you need new skills. You need new skills. You need new relationships, or you need to deepen some relationships you have. You need new assets. You need certain resources. You need certain tools. And these are kind of like, they become like check boxes. And so the more we can identify what these suckers actually are for the next phase of growth, the more we know what we need to embrace in our own incompetence and say, okay, can I intentionally go into the zone of incompetence to learn this skill so that then I can become competent, and then I can excel, and then it can amplify what I can actually do. So on this chart, it kind of showed like, like what, you could say this is like, what are my concerns? What are the bigger problems I'm here to solve? Or what's the bigger problem? What's the issue I'm here to solve? And some of you, it'll be much more specific. Like mine's it's a big umbrella. Like you could throw anything under that umbrella, planetary and personal thrive. For some of you, it's like to help women over 60 with MS or something like that. It's like really specific, or it's like to diversify wellness in my neighborhood or something like that. I'm choosing wellness-based themes because that's a little bit where I live. And that's okay. Like specific is great in terms of what your concerns are. And then this is a bit of like the how, like how you work well, or what is like the vehicle or the structure. The free solutions part, this is a bit of the ethos of like what's really in line with your ethics. Like for me, it's really in line with my ethics to offer free solutions. And I'm looking more and more closely at like what solutions are truly free. Like not everybody has access to clean air. And so doing pranayama isn't always appropriate, right? Whereas pranayama, or doing intentional breathing exercises to calm your nervous system and to grow your immune system, is it really a free solution? And so that's something I need to actively grapple with and like address. And that ties me right back into my root concern. So these two things will often have a direct reflection on each other. And then this, like what you're good at. Like this is kind of what you're naturally good at. Some people will say that this is like in your natural zone of genius. I didn't realize I was good at communication, that I was good at like teaching Ayurveda to people who lived in a westernized culture. But enough people told me that. They're like, oh, it's so easy to learn Ayurveda from you. So after a few years of being told like, you're so practical, like I can use the stuff that you're telling me and I can do it immediately. I was like, oh, so when you really start to listen to consistent feedback, that's where you get a sense of that, of what you're good at. This stuff really will show up in your personality profiles. So some people will do like Gallup Strength Finder is a good one. The DISC assessment is a good one. The Kolbe assessment is a good one. How to fascinate. There's a gazillion of these personality profiles out there. Myers-Briggs, somewhat effective, but not as particular, I think, as these other ones. Wealth dynamic is one of my favorite ones. It's more expensive, but it's very, very helpful for understanding where you intersect with economy. So what you're good at, like there's certain things that like you're better at. Like I'm better at creating things and being like the lead person talking about something than I am being the mechanic behind the scenes. Mechanic behind the scenes, not so much. So just knowing like stuff like that. Some people have, and wealth dynamics is a good one. Like for, if you're a supporter, understanding like that's what you want to trade on. Like that goes what you're good at. Like there's nothing in any of these that's better or worse than. It just is your isness. It's just what you came in with. So where we're at now is we're just looking at, okay, I have some sense of my deeper dream of this next chapter of my life. I have some sense of what I'd do if I knew I couldn't fail. It's starting to become maybe from like shapeless to shaped to more and more concrete. What am I going to need to do it? And you got to be willing to risk incompetence. And then the more you can get specific of like, what am I incompetent at? That's going to be like the most helpful. And usually these are skills. Now, those of you, some of you are good at leveraging other people's skills. Like if you're strong in, say you run a team and you're strong in hiring, right? Great. So you're going to leverage that. But if you need help to do what you need to do and you don't know how to like get other people on board, then that would be the skill. The skill that you would need to do is like, oh, how do I build a network? Or how do I build a team around this? Or how do I get a helper? How do I get the right people to help me with this? How do I leverage other people's skills? So if that's not a skill, that again is going more into something that as you realize like, oh, a bigger dharma, there's going to be things that you don't have. There's going to be people that you don't have. Who is that? What skills do they have? Like what's in team building, it's like, it becomes a job title. What's the job title? So a lot of people think that like, oh, you can just live in your zone of genius. And it's great because it's built on your zone of excellence. But it's not true. And that's what he's talking about in this quote. So I'm going to read this quote again. Hopefully my throat won't be weird. The first purpose of life is to be a person of vision, the essential act of all great leaders. As we do this, we come face to face with our need for wholeness and confront that which limits us from offering our contribution. Thus, the second person of life is to overcome the obstacles that block us, many of which are within our own structure of beliefs. Our task in life is to keep a polar tension between a vision of the unique meaning that is striving for expression in our lives and to remain honest about the unintegrated side of ourselves that are incapable of living out the vision. To combine these two purposes, to serve and to heal, is to be a leader. Engaging in these practices with discipline, honesty, and authenticity as a committed student of oneself and one's circumstances leads us towards leadership and true empowerment, towards greatness, and towards organizations, nations, and a global community that reflect and fulfill our highest aspirations. That is mastering leadership.